The calm before the shock. The Nairo system was quiet that morning. Too quiet. 3 suns glowed in the distance, their light bathing the scattered asteroids in warm gold. Cargo ships floated in neat lines near the trade station, waiting for clearance to jump to other sectors. Merchants were loading crates, children played in zero-gravity rings, and station speakers played soft music. But underneath that calm, there was tension. Everyone felt it. The Galactic Empire's ships had been spotted 2 days ago. They were closing in. And when the Empire came, it never left quietly. Station Master Varen stood at the observation deck, staring at the distant flashes of light on his scanner display. They were faint but unmistakable FEL burns, dozens of them. How long? He asked quietly. The officer beside him checked the readings. 3 hours, maybe less. Varen's jaw tightened. Send the signal. All civilians return to dock. Trade station will enter lockdown. By the time the first Imperial ships appeared on the edge of the system, the people of Nairo Station were already inside, doors sealed, engines powered down. The Empire liked easy targets, and showing any movement meant you were worth shooting. The blockade formed quickly, 2 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and a swarm of smaller gunships. They spread out like a steel net, engines glowing, weapons armed. On the largest cruiser, Admiral Tharek watched the station through the main viewport. His voice was cold. Transmit to the station, he ordered. They will surrender their resources and swear loyalty to the Empire, or we burn them down. The message reached the station moments later. Varen listened, fists clenched. It was the same speech the Empire gave every time, to every system. Around the station, civilians whispered in fear. No one believed help was coming. Nairo's was far from the core worlds, and the Galactic Navy didn't waste fleets on backwater. Trade hubs, the hours dragged. Imperial patrols tightened their net, scanning every docked ship. The people waited for the order to open fire. Then the scanners picked up something strange. Unidentified contact. The sensor officer on Varen's deck reported. Single ship, small signature, coming in fast from deep space. Varen frowned. Probably a smuggler too dumb to stay away. But the readings didn't match any ship in their database. The design was unknown, dot out in the blockade bay. Imperial fleet detected it too. On the bridge of his cruiser, Admiral Tharek leaned forward. Only one ship? And they're heading straight for us, he chuckled. A fool's last mistake. Shall we intercept, sir? His second-in-command asked. Tar-Eek nodded. Send 2 destroyers. Capture it. I want to know who thinks they can stroll into my blockade. The unknown ship did not slow. It didn't answer hails. It didn't adjust course. It simply kept coming, moving through the black like a predator that had already chosen its prey. On Nairo Station, civilians pressed against the viewport glass, watching the speck of light grow larger dot when it finally came into view. It was unlike anything anyone had seen. Sleek black armor with no visible seams. Long weapon banks that glinted under the light of the suns. Engines that flared with a strange deep blue glow instead of the usual white. The hull carried no markings except for one. On the forward plating, in crisp white letters, a single word. Nemesis. In the Imperial fleet. The destroyers moved in to flank the newcomer. Unknown vessel. The Imperial captain's voice crackled over open comms. You are entering a restricted zone under Imperial control. Power down your engines and surrender immediately. The Nemesis gave no reply. Final warning, power down, or the transmission cut off. Not jammed. Not interrupted. Just gone. On the Nairo Station observation deck, Varen felt his breath catch. The Nemesis had vanished from every scanner for exactly 3 seconds. When it reappeared, it was directly between the 2 destroyers. Then it fired. Twin railgun slugs tore through the first destroyer's bridge. The second shot hit the other destroyer's reactor, turning it into a ball of flame. Both Imperial ships were gone in less than 5 seconds. Gasps filled the station. No one had ever seen an Imperial warship destroyed that fast. Admiral Tharek stood frozen for a heartbeat and barked orders. All ships close in on that vessel. Destroy it. But something about his voice had changed. The confidence was still there, but underneath was the first hint of unease. Because in that moment, the calm in the Nairo system had ended, and the shock had only just begun. A warship like no other, the wreckage of the 2 Imperial destroyers still burned, drifting slowly toward the system's asteroid belt. Chunks of molten armor spun in the void, glowing orange against the cold black. On Nairo Station, no one spoke for several seconds. People stood frozen at the observation windows, trying to process what they had just seen. 1 Imperial ship destroyed was unheard of. 2 within seconds was impossible. Inside the Nemesis, Captain Elias Kane sat in a darkened command chair. The bridge was silent, except for the low hum of the ship's systems. His eyes scanned the holographic tactical display, marking the positions of the remaining Imperial ships. 2 down, his weapons officer reported quietly. 8 to go. Kane's voice was calm, almost casual. They'll come at us together now. Good. Let's give them a reason to remember this day. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominion's Pride, Admiral Tharek glared at the tactical map. That was no pirate ship, he said through clenched teeth. No smuggler has that kind of firepower. His second-in-command shifted uneasily. Sensors can't identify the weapon type. It's beyond anything in the registry. Then, we find its weakness, Tharek snapped. Signal all ships. Form an attack wall. We hit them from 3 sides at once. The Imperial fleet began to move, their formation tightening. Heavy cruisers took point, with smaller gunships weaving between them like hunting hounds. From Nairo Station, the formation looked unstoppable, an iron curtain sweeping toward the lone human ship. The Nemesis didn't move. It stayed exactly where it was, facing the oncoming fleet as if daring them to try. On the station's comm network, civilians whispered nervously. Why aren't they retreating? They're outnumbered 10 to 1. Maybe they're broken down. Admiral Tharek opened a wide-band channel. Unknown vessel. Identify yourself immediately. This is your last chance to surrender. You are surrounded. For a moment, there was silence. And a voice came back deep, steady, and carrying a weight that made even Imperial officers pause. This is the human warship Nemesis. Leave this system, or be destroyed. On the Dominion's Pride, Tharek actually laughed. 1 ship against the Empire? You're either mad or lying. Kane's reply was cold. Try me. The first. Shots came from the Empire plasma lances and missile volleys, lighting up the darkness. But before the weapons could hit, the Nemesis shimmered. Its black hull seemed to ripple like water, and the entire ship vanished from sight. Where did they go? An Imperial officer shouted. They reappeared 5 kilometers behind the Imperial wall. Before the enemy could react, the Nemesis opened. Fire. Twin railguns fired in perfect sync, each shot tearing through the engines of a cruiser. 2 massive explosions lit up the void, hurling debris across the formation. The Imperial gunships wheeled around, but the Nemesis was already gone vanished. Again, on Nairo Station, the crowd watching through the glass gasped. There. Teleporting? One merchant asked. No, another replied, eyes wide. They're moving faster than the scanners can track. The Nemesis reappeared a 3rd time, this time directly between 2 Imperial frigates. Fire broadside, Kane ordered. A barrage of plasma rounds and guided kinetic slugs erupted from both sides of the Nemesis. The frigates didn't stand a chance. One broke apart instantly. The other spun away, trailing atmosphere before detonating. Admiral Tharic slammed his fist into the arm of his chair. They can't be everywhere at once. Find their pattern. Trap them. But there was no pattern. Every time the Nemesis disappeared, it reappeared somewhere unexpected. Every shot it fired hit exactly where it would do the most damage. Inside the Nemesis, Kane's crew worked with silent precision. Every movement was practiced. Every order executed instantly. His helmsman looked up. Admiral's flagship is shifting position. Looks like they're trying to draw us in. Kane's lips curved in a faint smile. Good. Let's accept the invitation. The Nemesis turned sharply and accelerated toward the largest Imperial cruiser, the Dominion's Pride. Alarms blared on the Imperial bridge. Tharic gripped the arms of his chair. All power to forward shields. Focus every weapon on them. Energy beams and missile trails filled the space between the two ships. But the Nemesis kept coming, weaving through the fire like a predator, dodging the thrash of wounded prey. From Nairo Station, it looked like suicide. One tiny dark shape rushing straight toward the largest warship in the fleet. Kane wasn't charging blindly. He was closing in for the kill. The first strike, the Nemesis closed in on the Dominion's Pride, its black armor glinting under the system's suns. Panels along its hull slid apart, revealing a massive cylindrical weapon. The metal surface pulsed with deep blue light, and faint arcs of energy danced along its length. Inside the Imperial flagship, alarm screamed. Unknown energy spike. The sensor officer shouted. Power readings off the scale. Admiral Tharic gripped the arm of his chair. All forward. Batteries fire now. Destroy them before they can. But he never finished the order. The Nemesis fired. A single lance of condensed energy shot across the void, striking the Dominion's Pride square in the forward shields. The barrier flared bright white for a heartbeat, then collapsed entirely. The beam punched straight through the flagship's bow, slicing through decks, engines, and weapons mounts in a perfect line. The massive cruiser shuddered as internal explosions ripped through its structure. On Nairo Station, the entire viewing deck erupted in gasps and shouts. They just cut it in half. That's impossible. Nothing does that to an Imperial flagship. Through the observation glass, the civilians watched the Dominion's Pride drift helplessly, fire spilling from gaping holes in its armor. Inside the flagship, chaos reigned. Reactors going critical, an engineer screamed. Seal bulkheads. We're losing power to. The voice cut off in static as another explosion ripped through the ship. Tharic stumbled but refused to abandon the bridge. His voice was low, almost a growl. Signal the fleet. Bring them down. All ships kill the Nemesis. The remaining Imperial cruisers and gunships surged forward, weapons blazing. Streams of plasma and swarms of missiles lit up the darkness. The Nemesis vanished again, disappearing from all Imperial sensors. Where are they? Tharic shouted. They reappeared directly behind an Imperial cruiser, so close the larger ship's guns couldn't turn fast enough to fire. Broadside, Kane ordered. A storm of kinetic slugs and plasma bolts slammed into the cruiser's engines. The ship's core detonated, sending fragments spinning into the side of a nearby gunship, which also exploded. Imperial comms filled with panic. There, inside our formation. Shields failing, we can't get a lock. There, the transmission ended with a burst of static. On the Nemesis bridge, Kane's crew moved like a single machine. The targeting officer spoke without looking. Up, 2 destroyers moving to intercept from starboard. Take them together, Kane replied. Twin railgun shots lanced out, piercing the first destroyer's bridge and the second's reactor in the same instant. 2 more kills seconds apart. From Nairo Station, the battle looked like an unstoppable storm. The lone human warship darted in and out of the Imperial formation, striking with deadly precision, leaving burning wrecks in its wake. That it was a dance of destruction, one the Empire was losing badly. Inside the Dominion's pride, the surviving crew fought to stabilize the ship. The forward decks were gone, the primary weapons offline, and power was flickering in every section. Tharek's second-in-command looked at him with pale eyes. "Admiral, we can't win this." Tharek's jaw clenched. "Then we make them bleed before we die." He ordered all remaining ships to converge on the Nemesis. The Imperial fleet formed a loose circle, trying to trap the human warship in overlapping fields of fire. But Kane saw the move before it happened. "They want to cage us," he said calmly. "Break the circle. Target the ships on the outer left." Full power. The Nemesis accelerated, blasting toward the weakest point in the Imperial line. Its railguns tore through 2 gunships instantly, while missiles arced out to hit a third from above. The gap in the circle widened. "Now," Kane ordered. The human warship shot through the breach, disappearing into the black beyond the formation only, to reappear seconds later on the far side of the Dominion's pride, weapon ports glowing. Again, not breaking the flagship, the Dominion's pride loomed ahead, a wounded giant surrounded by the burning wrecks of its escorts. Its armor was scarred, its shields gone, and sections of its hull still glowed from the first strike. But now, the Nemesis was charging its weapon again, this time with far more power. The deep blue glow along the weapon's length pulsed faster, and arcs of lightning crackled across its surface. On the Imperial flagship's bridge, alarms wailed. Energy spiked double the last reading. The sensor officer cried, "They're targeting us again." Admiral Tharek gripped the armrests of his chair, eyes locked on the tactical display. All remaining power to the forward armor. Divert? From life support, if you have to. We will not die here without a fight. The crew scrambled, rerouting systems, locking down bulkheads, and trying to keep the massive ship from falling apart. In the engine room, engineers worked with shaking hands as the temperature climbed dangerously high. Tharek's second-in-command leaned close. "Admiral, if that weapon fires again..." Tharek cut him off sharply. "If it fires again, we will not be here to see it. Ready all weapons. If they kill us, we take them with us." Out in the void, the Nemesis slid smoothly into position, keeping its bow locked on the Dominion's pride. On the human ship's bridge, Captain Elias Kane's eyes were calm but sharp. "Target the main reactor. 1 shot. Make it count." The targeting officer nodded, his fingers dancing over the console. Locked. The Imperial fleet's remaining ships tried to interfere, moving in to block the shot. But the Nemesis's railguns fired first, punching through 2 intercepting cruisers in seconds. Their drifting wreckage only cleared Kane's line of fire. "Admiral." Tharek saw the human warship's weapon reach full charge. The deep blue glow turned white-hot, and even from this distance, the air on the flagship's bridge seemed to vibrate. "Race for impact." He roared. The Nemesis fired. The beam was brighter than the suns in the system, a single column of energy that tore across the void and struck the Dominion's pride dead center. For 1 long second, the massive flagship resisted. Armor plates burned, internal shielding flared. And then the beam punched through, cutting the ship in half from bow to stern. Inside, fire raced along corridors, consuming everything in its path. Explosions ripped through the decks. Crew members were thrown from their stations as the structure groaned and broke apart. On the bridge, Tharek stayed in his chair, refusing to look away as the front half of his ship separated from the rear. For a heartbeat, his gaze locked with the distant silhouette of the Nemesis. Then the flagship exploded. The shockwave rippled through the surrounding ships, disabling several and sending the rest into a chaotic retreat. On the Nemesis bridge, Holt Keynes. First officer watched the tactical screen as red icons began to vanish. Flagship destroyed. Imperial formation is breaking apart. Kane didn't smile. They'll run now. Don't let them regroup. The human warship surged forward, hunting down the scattered Imperial vessels one by one. Railgun rounds pierced engines, missiles tore through fleeing destroyers, and plasma beams burned through gunship hulls. Within minutes, the proud Imperial blockade was reduced to drifting debris and dying engines. On Nairo Station, the civilians could hardly believe what they were seeing. The Empire had come in force, certain of victory, and one human warship had taken them apart piece by piece. The station master, Varen, spoke softly, almost to himself. This will be told for generations. But the battle wasn't over yet. Holt turned to Kane. Sir, last remaining Imperial. Cruiser is holding position at the system's edge. They're not running. Kane's gaze sharpened. Then they're planning something desperate. He looked back at the view screen, watching the lone ship turn to face them. The weapon from nowhere, the last Imperial cruiser, roared toward the Nemesis, engines blazing at full power. It didn't weave. It didn't fire. It just came straight on her. Steel spear aimed at the heart of the human warship. On the Nemesis bridge, alarms screamed. Impact in 90 seconds. The helmsman shouted. Holt, the first officer, glanced at Captain Elias Kane. Sir, if they ram us at that speed? Won't, Kane said calmly. Bring the arc lance online. The crew reacted instantly, powering up a system that had stayed hidden through the entire battle. Deep within the Nemesis, armored panels peeled back to reveal a long cylindrical emitter wrapped in silver coils. Faint arcs of violet light began crawling along its surface. The ship's AI spoke in its cool, neutral tone. Arc lance charging. Stand by. On the Imperial cruiser's bridge, the captain grinned grimly. They think they can stop us? Nemesis will die under our hull. One of his officers looked uneasy. Sir, sensors are detecting an unusual energy surge. Too late for tricks, the captain growled. We hit them in under a minute. On Nairo Station, civilians watched from the safety of the observation deck. The scene was terrifying. A lone human warship standing against a massive enemy vessel, rushing in like a meteor. Why aren't they moving? Someone whispered. They can't get out of the way in time, another replied. But Varen, the station master, shook his head slowly. No, they're letting it come. Arc lance at 70% charge, the weapons officer reported. Kane's voice was steady. Helm hold position. Let them close the gap. Holt frowned. You're going to fire it point blank? Kane finally allowed himself a small, dangerous smile. I want them to see it coming. The Imperial cruiser was so close now that its armor plating was visible to the naked eye, its forward hull glowing red from the heat of its engines. Every gun along its bow was powered down. They were betting everything on the collision. Arc lance at full charge. The AI announced. Fire, Kane ordered. The Nemesis unleashed a beam, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It wasn't a single bolt or a thin lance. It was a wave of searing violet energy that ripped through space itself. The very light around it seemed to bend as it tore forward. The beam struck the cruiser dead on. For an instant, its armor held. And then it DIDN single quotes T. The Chinglas bored straight through the ship from bow to stern in less than 2 seconds. Every deck, every corridor, every weapon system was vaporized in its path. The entire cruiser split in half, both pieces drifting apart before erupting in a chain of blinding explosions. The shockwave rattled the Nemesis, but the ship held firm. On Nairo Station, the crowd erupted in cheers and disbelief. Children shouted. Merchants hugged strangers. Even the station guards smiled for the first time that day. Varen just stared. his voice low. One shot, and an Imperial warship is gone. On the Nemesis bridge, Holt exhaled slowly. Last contact eliminated. System is clear. Kane nodded. Get me a status report on our systems, and open a channel to the station. A few minutes later, the holoscreen flickered, showing the station master's weary but relieved face. System owes you everything, Captain Kane, Varen said. We thought no one would come. Kane's voice was firm. We didn't come for thanks. We came to make sure the Empire knows they're not untouchable. Holt leaned in quietly. Sir, what's our next move? Kane looked out at the drifting wreckage of the blockade. We send a message, loud and clear. Shadows in the aftermath. The wreckage of the Imperial blockade still drifted through space, glowing faintly in the starlight. The Nemesis floated, silent among it, like a predator after the hunt. On the bridge, the crew worked quietly, repairing minor damage and restoring power reserves. Kane stood near the main display, his eyes on the tactical map. The battlefield was clear. For now, Captain, Holt said, breaking the silence, we've got comms open. Ready to send the message? Kane didn't answer immediately. He studied the tactical display again. Hold it. Something's wrong. The helmsman frowned. Sir? Kane stepped closer to the console. Run a deep scan. Wide band. A moment later, the results flashed across the screen several. Faint energy signatures just outside the debris field. Too faint for normal ships. Too deliberate to be random. Cloaked vessels, Holt said grimly. The crew tensed. Cloaking technology was rare, expensive, and deadly when used well. The Empire didn't use it often, which meant these weren't Imperial ships. The comms officer's voice shook. Captain, they're broadcasting nothing. Not even an ID ping. Kane's jaw tightened. Unknown ships, cloaked, and a battlefield they didn't fight for? That means they're hunting for something. On Nairo's station, Varen received the Nemesis warning. Unidentified ships? He repeated. Yes, Kane confirmed over the comms. Keep your shields up and every civilian inside. If they decloak, it won't be to say hello. Varen's voice lowered. Who else would come here so soon? Kane glanced at Holt. Scavengers? Or someone who doesn't want survivors talking? Suddenly, one of the faint signatures moved. It glided through the debris field like a shark in murky water, positioning itself directly behind the Nemesis. Contact. Closing fast, the helmsman called out. Shields up. Kane barked. The instant the shields flared, the hidden ship uncloaked, sleek, black, and bristling with strange weapons the crew didn't recognize. Its hull carried no markings. They're hailing us, comms reported. Kane nodded. Put it through. A cold, distorted voice filled the bridge. Human vessel. Power down and prepare to surrender the arc lance technology. You have 60 seconds. Holt's eyes went wide. They know about the lance. Kane's tone was like ice. And they want it bad enough to come into an active war zone. The unknown ship fired without warning. Bolts of green energy slammed into the Nemesis shields, making the deck vibrate. Shields holding, but they're probing us, Holt said. They're testing for weak points, Kane replied. We don't give them time to find one. Kane turned to weapons. Load EMP flechettes. Full spread. Target their drive systems. The weapons officer hesitated. Captain, if we knock out their drives in this debris field, they'll be stranded. Kane didn't blink. Exactly. The Nemesis fired. Small projectiles burst across the enemy's hull, releasing pulses of electromagnetic energy. The black ship's weapons flickered, then went dark. Its engines sputtered and died. But before the crew could celebrate, 2 more cloaked signatures suddenly appeared on the scanners. 2 more incoming. the helmsman shouted. Kane's voice cut through the tension. Halt, get me full power. To the arc lance. Helm, keep us moving. We're not done yet. The crew moved in perfect unison. The Nemesis twisted between floating chunks of destroyed cruisers, using the wreckage for cover. The two new ships decloaked identical to the first, their weapons already glowing. Varen's voice came over the comms, tight with fear. Captain, whatever they want, don't let them near this station. Kane answered calmly. They won't. The arc lance coils began to glow again, brighter than before. Kane waited until the two ships lined up in pursuit. Fire. The violet beam cut through the debris and into the first pursuing ship, tearing it in half instantly. The blast caught the second in its side, ripping away engines and weapons in a single flash. Both ships spun out of control, drifting helplessly on the bridge. Halt exhaled. All contacts neutralized or disabled. System clear again. Kane finally nodded. Now send the message. And make sure every corner of the galaxy hears it. The message to the galaxy, the Nemesis floated in the void, silent except for the soft hum of her engines. Around her, the wreckage of both the Imperial fleet and the mysterious black ships drifted in the cold starlight. It was too quiet for what had just happened. Captain Kane stood at the center of the bridge, his hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the main display. Comes, he said quietly. Open the channel. All bands. Civilian and military. Holt turned from her station. That will reach. Everyone, sir. Even them. That's the point. Kane's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. Soft chime echoed, and the light on the comm panel turned green. Channel open, Holt confirmed. Kane stepped forward, facing the projection lens. His voice was steady, carrying across the stars. This is Captain Jonathan Kane of the Human. Warship Nemesis. Hours ago, the Imperial fleet came to conquer. They lasted minutes. Minutes. We are not invaders. We are not predators. But we are not prey. Any who attack Earth or those under her shield will find the same fate. Across the galaxy, in thousands of ships, stations, and homes, beings of every species stopped to listen. Merchants on far-off trade routes froze in the middle of deals. Soldiers on distant battlefields looked up from their weapons. Even Imperial governors turned pale at the voice that now echoed on every frequency. Kane's voice continued, quiet but dangerous. We have the means to destroy fleets. We have the will to protect those who seek safety with us. The forgotten race of Alvaries now lives under Earth's shield. Touch them, and you answer to us. This is not a threat. It is a promise. Holt muted the channel for a moment. Message is sent. But, sir, we're getting something strange. Strange how? Kane asked. Encrypted pings. Hundreds of them. They're bouncing through relay stations, moving fast. Holt's face was pale. Some are Imperial codes, but most I don't recognize. Kane frowned. So they heard us. And they're talking. Varen's voice came over the comms from Nairo's station. Kane, the Alvaries Council just heard your broadcast. They want me to tell you. They've never felt safe before today. You've given them hope. Kane's expression softened for a brief moment. Tell them hope is only as strong as the shield that guards it. We'll keep that shield strong. But as the comm closed, the sensors chimed. The helmsman looked up sharply. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Long range, but closing fast. Not Imperial. Unknown configuration. Holt's voice was tense. Sir, it's not just one fleet. It's several. Coming from different directions. The bridge fell silent. Everyone looked to Kane. Are they converging on our position? He asked. Yes, sir, the helmsman said quietly. All of them. Kane turned toward the viewport, watching the endless stars. Somewhere out there, forces were moving, maybe curious, maybe afraid, maybe hungry for the power the Nemesis carried. They heard our promise, Kane murmured, and now they want to test it. He straightened, his voice crisp. Helm, prepare the jump drive. Holt, get me full power to shields and weapons. Comes, signal the defense network, we may need reinforcements. Crew moved instantly. The bridge lights dimmed to combat mode.